Absolutely. So we regularly talk to our members on a variety of subject matters to get their thoughts and opinions, not just on their experience on the site from a pure business perspective. Absolutely, that's part of it, but also from a psychological perspective. What were you thinking? Like, what were the outcomes? And then we've had, like I said,
Hmm.
lots of academic studies, but also internally, my team particularly talks to our members on a very, very regular basis because the data tells you one story, but hearing the emotional aspect, the anecdotal from
Hmm.
the individual tells you a very different perspective. And when you match the two, you get better understanding of what people are looking for, what their desires are. And so I don't think a week goes by where we're not regularly connecting with our members to get feedback, input, and stories. And some of the stories are just amazing. I've been, like I said, 12 years with this company, and every, month I'll say, "Oh, I've heard it all. There's nothing new that can possibly
Hmm.
be come out of this." And then my team will come up and say, "Well, I got a story for you." And I was like, "Holy moly, that's a new one. I've never seen that." Like, one of my
Uh-huh.
favorite is we have this one member, and I could talk about it publicly because she's out there herself. Her name was Bobbi Goldman, and she was married for a very long time to a very successful Hollywood producer. She had a number of her own businesses, so she was independently financial and successful. And unfortunately, her husband passed away. And then I think at this point, she's either late 50s, early 60s. And she's
Hmm.
seeing her therapist, and the therapist says, "Listen, Bobby, you're depressed, but I think, the issue is you just need to get laid. And it's been a while." And Bob's like, "Shit, you're right." And so she signs up to all these traditional dating sites, and all the men in her age category are like, they're basically looking for somebody to fold their clothes and make them a sandwich. And that's
Right.
not what Bobby wanted or Bobby needed. And so Bobby signs up to Ashley Madison. She ends up at one point, she's dating 7 different married men.
Wow.
And so at
That'll
some
keep you
point,
busy.
absolutely, and she meets some of the spouses of these men, in fact, and these women
Oh,
are, thankful. "Thank you for being there, for doing this. He's so much happier. That part of my life ended for me. I didn't
wow.
really want to participate anymore, but I don't, feel any shame about him doing this. It's a perfect pairing." And what's fascinating about all this is the reason we became aware of Bobby is that she ended up writing an off-Broadway play called The Curvy Widow.
Okay.
And so her story is in song and dance out there,
Oh
and I
my
think it's beautiful
gosh.
because it tells a
Yeah.
very different nuanced aspect of how infidelity is not one story, one way, and it
Hmm.
doesn't always show up in how we think about it. Another type of affair that I've heard through members, and this story is poignant, is the compassionate affair.
Okay.
And we had a member
Explain.
who yeah, we had a member who she was a lawyer, successful, well regarded in her industry, in her city. She was somewhat prominent to a degree. And unfortunately, her husband was a bit older than her. He fell into early onset Alzheimer. And so she
Hmm.
ultimately became a caregiver for him. But her desires, needs, and wants didn't dissipate. But because of the nature of her position and who she was as a public figure to a degree, she couldn't go
Hmm.
and date people. That wasn't
Right.
an avenue viable to her. And so she chose
Hmm.
Ashley Madison, and she found a partner she met someone who was, this long-term affair that fulfilled each other's needs and enabled her to go back and continue to be the wife her husband needed her to be, that she wanted to be, because the
Hmm.
day-to-day frustrations of that part that she had lost was being fulfilled by somebody else. It's not necessarily ideal, I suppose, but in a
Yeah.
world where, we have such judgment, it makes me feel joyful that we could provide that to somebody. It shouldn't necessarily have to be that way, but it is. And that's, why our business exists for people like that and across the board. They can choose a discrete path to fulfill those needs and be the good person they want to be.
So, what would you say, given all of the feedback that you guys get from members and the different studies and data, outside sources that you guys use to collect data, look at data, analyze data? What would you say in this day, in this last couple of years? What's the number one reason that you're hearing that people are joining your site and looking for other ways to fulfill their needs?
Discretion, particularly from the female side, where they're tired of having their intimate needs, wants, and desires posted online, and they don't want it, it shared with anybody and everybody. They want to curate, a connection of people who are what meets their needs, not every
Hmm.
Tom, Dick, and Joe on the
Hmm.
internet.